Hello, the internet. I'm Dr. Peter Allen. During the week, I'm a bioanalytical chemist, but on the weekend, I like to make videos about science and science fiction. This week, I'm going to give you my hot take on the Noumena series. At time of recording, that includes Axiom's End and The Truth of the Divine, which I finished yesterday. So let's make a themed cocktail and talk about that. Noumena is my favorite kind of science fiction. It works on two levels. It's a fast-paced, plot-based novel first, a first contact adventure where humans meet and try to kill and or save some technologically advanced space aliens. As with most human/alien stories, it deals with the politics of the other. But on another level, the books trade in themes of the nature of emotion and trauma and the nature of mind itself. So let's fix ourselves a cocktail. In keeping with the theme of aliens, minds, and trauma, I'm going to be making an alien brain hemorrhage. It's really more of a party shot than a cocktail. We're going to need 1.5 ounces of peach schnapps, a little bit of Irish cream, don't need to buy a big bottle, blue curacao, and grenadine. Float your Irish cream on a shot of schnapps for the nature of mind, a little curacao for the alien, and a dash of grenadine for the trauma. Look at that slow motion. That looks pretty terrible, but it's not that bad.
For science.
Since that went down pretty fast, let's have a peach and bourbon cocktail to sip. Similar flavors, but a bit more grown up. 1.5 ounces bourbon, 0.5 ounces schnapps, 2 ounces of orange. Stir and serve over ice. Now, my favorite science fiction has an adventure plot that can be taken on its own merits. That's not bad. Ideally, it should be a sci-fi novel that presents fun scientific ideas in some new and fictional light. Speculative fiction should speculate on wild, crazy, interesting things, and these books do that. You could read this as a straight science fiction story about aliens and people's reactions to them. You don't need to dig deeper, but it's still great. It starts with Cora, our heroine, meeting an alien. She happens to be the estranged daughter to a Julian Assange / Edward Snowden whistleblower anti-secrecy activist. That character also reminds me of Alex Jones and his bombastic personality and contempt for human decency. The alien, whom the humans call Ampersand, looks like an ostrich dragon with spider hands. He's looking for his compatriots who have been held in secret by the US government until recently, when Cora's father revealed that their presence was here and got President Bush ousted in favor of Vice President Cheney. So we've set up a huge interplanetary drama and a mess of human family recriminations for both species until it comes down to violence. The second book picks up after the violence with the arrival of another alien family member. Humans call him Nicola. Nicola is far more willing to interact with humans and sets all kinds of problems in motion, including publicity, a polarized political debate. People are trying to decide whether aliens have human rights or not. The story is an engaging one, even if it does get into some pretty challenging subjects like PTSD and suicide. But in addition to being just a good adventure story, these books explore some big ideas, from the big great filter, the idea that we don't see big galactic civilizations out there because something somewhere destroys them, to extra-dimensional communication. It's all there in Noumena. But let's talk about these themes one at a time. Theme 1. The aliens represent our emotions that feel external and invasive. Now, the aliens are called amygdalenes. Ostensibly, this is because amygdala is Latin for almond, and the aliens' eyes are almond-shaped, but the amygdala is also a little almond-shaped lump in our brain that's deeply involved with emotions. Now, this is a pretty explicit literary comparison between the aliens themselves and human emotions. Sometimes high-tech aliens can be presented in fiction like robotic and emotionless, but the amygdalenes are deeply emotional characters, even though they are also very different from us. Over and over, our main character Cora gets roped into the amygdalenes' story and traumatized by it. Her trauma and the amygdalenes' trauma reflect and amplify one another. She can't let them go, and yet they are profoundly degrading her mental health. Sort of like how trauma and PTSD render a person less able to deal with ordinary emotions, but those emotions are what make life meaningful. I don't know how universal this is, but sometimes emotions can feel like they're coming from outside. Emotions can feel like a thing that happens to us rather than a thing that grows from within us. And no spoilers, but this idea is very explicit and explored in these books. Theme 2. Relationship power imbalances are hard. There are huge power imbalances between Cora and Ampersand, her alien friend. There are huge imbalances between the humans and the amygdalenes. On one hand, we outnumber them, more than 1,000,000 to 1, but on the other hand, they have much better technology. The balance of power shifts wildly from one moment to the next. At one second, an angry mob of humans have an alien entirely defenseless, but another moment, the aliens display over-the-top abilities that could overpower any weapon or defense humans might care to muster. So circumstances determine who has the upper hand and who needs to be respectful of the other's vulnerabilities. This parallels human relationships in the story. At one point, Cora captures a guy named Kaveh who she thinks is trying to kill him, and she ties him up and maintains him in captivity for a while. He's so powerless that his ability to use the bathroom without soiling himself is at her discretion. But later, when they've come to a better understanding, Cora loses her job, he takes her in, gives her a place to stay, and suddenly her privacy depends on him. It depends on him whether she can avoid a demanding public that wants to either hear her story or murder her because she has sided with the aliens. Every relationship in this book is complicated by huge power imbalances. The characters try to navigate them, and no character is exclusively a villain. The books are really respectful in this portrayal. Cora is vulnerable and her friends are trying to take care of her, but they also try to respect her autonomy, and that's just one example of the way this book respects these dynamics. They're difficult. It's hard to balance, and the book is beautifully nuanced. Theme 3, the nature of mind. The second book in particular gets into some pretty heady stuff. Ultimately, the aliens believe that full personhood, like being a non-animal moral agent, is defined by 3 traits. Full people have intelligent communication. They build complex societies, like the ones that can make wonderful cocktails. And also cities and technology. And they can connect, third property, they can connect by an extra-dimensional link to one another. It's clear to these aliens, to the amygdalenes, that we have the first two, that we can make cocktails and that we can communicate with one another. But it's not clear whether we can do this third thing. This third defining property of full personhood is something that we would consider to be mysterious, divine, or supernatural, but the amygdalenes have the science and the technology to define and measure it. Consciousness, they say, extends beyond our 3-dimensional plus time reality. Consciousness extends into some extra-dimensional space, and minds can meet there and interact with one another. Now, this idea makes me think of another untestable hypothesis. Untestable hypotheses are inherently non-scientific. You can't test something, then it's just brain candy. You can't do science to it. The untestable hypothesis I'm thinking of is that the human mind is not a product of the brain, but rather the brain is receiving the mind from some higher dimensional space. And it's obviously a testable hypothesis that we are receiving our mind from, say, radio waves. We're not receiving them from radio waves. If you block radio waves, your consciousness continues. But it's impossible to test whether our consciousness is arriving externally from some extra dimensional space unless we have access to tools that can manipulate that space. And we don't right now. All of our tools exist in the classic 3 dimensions plus time. But this is science fiction. If some species does have such tools, what would that mean? They can measure minds in this higher dimensional space? Do all minds exist there? What does that imply about personhood? These books explore that idea, and that really excites me. And I'm really hopeful that there's going to be a third book. Anyhow, if you like cinematic science fiction with complex characters and interesting philosophical questions, you'll like these books. And if you like this video, please do give me a little thumbs up or share it on social media or whatever. I'll know to make more of this kind of thing if I see it. Thanks for watching.